There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Genesis. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. And because Er had no child, Judah, he asked his other son, Onan, his second son, to marry Tamar, to raise up an heir for his oldest son, Er. And this is called a levirate marriage. And it comes from the Latin word lavir, which means brother-in-law. And we'll see these rules come out later in the Mosaic law, but we can see that even here, they practice these rites even before the law of Moses. And so Onan, he takes his brother's widowed wife and he makes her his wife. And then we're told what kind of man Onan is, because he's the kind of man that doesn't want to raise up an heir to his brother. And so what Onan does is he never completes the act of intimacy with Tamar that would lead to a child. And many people, they've taught and used this passage to condemn the use of birth control or some types of sexual practices called onanism. But I'm not a judge of those kind of things because the Bible, it doesn't tell us about those types of things. And so I won't tell you. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself because I don't know. But I do think I know why God killed Onan, because God knew that Onan had an evil character. Because Onan here, he should have taken care of Tamar because she became his wife and he became her husband. And according to the rules of a levirate marriage, Onan did not have to take her as a wife. He had a choice, but it was considered very honorable to raise up a child to your brother and to keep his name in the family. And you have to figure that Tamar, that she was a pretty woman and she was a kind woman. And Onan saw that, but all Onan wanted to do is to use Tamar to gratify his own lusts. He didn't love Tamar, and he had no intention of ever giving Tamar a child because he didn't care about raising up an heir to his brother's name. And you'd think, well, why? Why wouldn't Onan want to do that? Because everybody would really know that the child was his. They would know that Onan was the child's father. And through that, well, Tamar, she would be comforted and she would also be provided for, because without a husband, there is no provision for Tamar. She's still considered Er's wife. But the reason Onan didn't do this is because Onan was greedy. He didn't care about Tamar's dilemma because he knew that child would not be considered his own child, but it would be Er's son. And you have to remember, Er, he's the firstborn. And so if he had this child with Tamar, this child would receive the double portion of the father's inheritance of Judah's wealth when he died. Because with Judah having 3 sons, his inheritance would have been divided into 4 portions. And the firstborn, Er, he would have received 2 of those portions. But if he didn't have a son, Onan would receive the right of the firstborn, and that double portion would be his. So Onan would eventually end up with 2/3 of Judah's wealth instead of only 25%. And God, he didn't like Onan treating Tamar like that. So God killed Onan. And so now we have Tamar here, and she's been a widow twice. And Tamar, you see, she's legally under her father-in-law, Judah's headship, because Tamar's marriage
was an arranged marriage. So she's not free to marry anybody she wants. But Judah, he is also obligated to provide her a husband. But Judah, he's treating Tamar as if there's something wrong with her, as if she's some kind of cursed woman, like some kind of black widow spider that's killing off her mates. But really, up until now, she's only been used to expose the evil that already exists in Judah's half-Canaanite sons. So Judah, he holds back his youngest son, Shelah, because Judah's afraid that he's going to die too. And we don't know how old Shelah was at this time, but it would seem really strange if he was a 12-year-old boy and he had a 20-something-year-old wife. So Judah, he tells Tamar to go back to her parents' home and to wait for Shelah to grow up. So she does. And so she goes back home. And she's wearing the clothes of widowhood. And she's wearing them year after year after year. And at some point during that time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, dies. But then the years still keep passing. And Shelah's getting pretty old. He's old enough to be married. And he's probably older than the age of Er when she was first married to him. And Tamar, she realizes that Judah has no intentions of ever providing for her a husband. And so she's been condemned to this life of barrenness. And in this society, it's dishonorable for a woman to be childless. And she's too young to be a widow. And she's been wearing these clothes of widowhood most of her adult young womanhood. And you see, just as Judah, he's lived around Tamar all these years, and he knew her character and her integrity. Well, she has also lived around him all these years, and she knew Judah's character, and she knew his shortcomings and what type of lifestyle he liked to live. And she knew that Judah wasn't a very dedicated, godly man, and that all his friends were Canaanites, and he liked Canaanite women. And he liked everything, not only the women, but he liked everything of that lifestyle and everything that goes with that lifestyle. And Tamar, she knows what time of year this is. It's sheep shearing time, which is party time. And she's told that Judah's going down to Timnah to see his old pal Hira the Adullamite. And Judah, he could have went to go visit his family, but that's just not the kind of guy Judah is, because this is kind of, for Judah, this is kind of like spring break or like the yearly trip to Vegas. And he's going to go out down there and he's going to hang out with his party boy buddies, Hira and his pals. And this is probably how Judah, he found his first wife. But she's no longer around, and she died. And so he's no longer obligated to her. So Judah, he packs up his stuff and he goes on his yearly business trip with the boys. And he's probably really lonely because he's not dating anyone. And there's a lot of people, and they'll act pretty moral while they're around their homes. And we've seen these kind of character flaws where they have a different kind of lifestyle when they're away from home, and they think they can get away with it. That they think that their immoral behavior is private and nobody knows what they do when they're away, that it's hidden from the people they live with. But Tamar, she knew what he did when he went down to Timnah, and so did God. And if you know your Bible pretty well, you would know that Timnah is where Samson, where he found his first wife, who was a Philistine woman, and it says that she pleased him. So Timnah is not the place where you find these women of great moral character. So Tamar, she dresses up like a woman of low moral character, the kind of woman you might find in Timnah. And so she dressed up like a cult prostitute. And that means she would have had her face veiled because they're not to be known, because that's how those kind of harlots dressed. And this was apparently the type of women that Judah was hoping to meet. And so Tamar, she leaves her parents' home and she beats Judah down to the area outside of Timnah because she knew which way he would pass by. But Judah, he wasn't prepared for this encounter because he didn't bring any money with him. he wasn't probably expecting anything to happen to him until he got into Timnah. He wasn't really expecting to meet women on the way, but he's ready to start having this trip to Vegas, and he wants to make a deal with this young woman to have an affair that he can remember. But Tamar, she wasn't looking to act like a prostitute. She was only looking for one man, and that man was Judah, because all Tamar really wanted was to have a husband, and all she wanted to have was a family. She didn't want to be condemned to a destitute life of loneliness and wearing widow garments. She wanted to be a mom. She wanted to have a meaningful life. And so Judah approaches her, and they barter, but he has nothing to barter with. And they agreed on the price of a young goat. But she says she wants a pledge, and she's not really interested here in goats. But he has nothing with him, and she's not going to take credit because she's already devised this plan. She wants his ID. She wants that signet and that cord because that's his signature. That's what he makes all his deals with. That's his personal stamp that he stamps on everything, and it's exclusively his. It's like having his personal credit card. And then she takes his customized staff, and he's been walking around proud of that staff for the last 20 years. And so it happens. And Tamar, she conceives a child. And Judah, he's not really wanting to advertise what he's been doing because he's still pretending to take this moral high ground. And he doesn't have the courage to bring that goat himself. So he sends his pagan buddy Hira the Adullamite, his Canaanite party pal. And the girl that he met, he says, she's not there. And no one has ever heard of anyone ever working that corner. And so they decide to keep it quiet so that Judah, so he can maintain his good reputation. So now Tamar back home, and she's wearing her widow garments again, and she starts showing, and she can't hide her pregnancy any longer. And everybody assumes she's been playing the harlot. And it's obvious that this is not a love story. Because you see that Judah, he doesn't care for her, but he should, because Tamar is part of his household. She is part of his family. She's his daughter-in-law. But what Judah does is he condemns her to death. And not just condemning her to death, but death by burning her. Because to Judah, Tamar is just an obligation. She's someone to feed. She's someone he has no intentions of blessing. She was only a constant reminder to him of the death of his two sons. And it's really awkward when you condemn someone to death for something that you're guilty of, where you walk around with your friends and your family and your neighbors like you're some kind of moral pillar in the community, and where you thought you were keeping your sin life private, and that you conceal that area of your life where no one would ever find out.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.